I made the decision, it's the most important decision I believe of your life, that I'm not going to suffer anymore. Life's too short to suffer, and I'm going to live in a beautiful state every day. And the way I do it is I catch myself when I start to get that sense of stress. I let it go, and I see the idea go by. So your thoughts about this person messing up your business or not following through. If I was in a room with 10,000 people, I guarantee you 60, 70% of the business owners have the same thoughts at times, right? I ask people all the time, tell me your most stressful thought. Oh, I'm worried about my children. This may happen. How many people have had that thought? Everybody. I might not make it financially level. How many have had that? Everybody. My point is, it's not your thought. It's the mind, not your mind. When you think it's your mind, you identify with it, and you can't separate from yourself.
Right.
But when you realize these thoughts have been around for millions of years, and I'm just thinking the same thought that so many people have thought before. Like, how many people have ever thought, I'm going to kill this son of a bitch? Now, you didn't do it because you didn't believe you're really going to kill them. But you felt it. You said it. You were there, right? So we all have thoughts. It's only the stressful thoughts we believe that mess us up. So what I try to show people is, if you can start to realize these thoughts have been around for millions of years. If I told you 1,000,000 years, 1,000, 100 years ago that we're going to go to the moon and back, you called me a lunatic or crazy. If I said 100 years ago, you're going to have a little box like this, it'll fit in your pocket, and you can click on it and you can see what the weather is any place. You can click on it and see a live person on the other side of the earth and talk to them by looking in this box. And the way it works is invisible waves are traveling around the earth, and it pulls invisible waves in the box. You go read between the lines. There's no way, you dumb idiot. It's never going to happen. So what I want you to realize is thoughts are invisible waves. When you turn on a TV, it takes invisible waves, and depending on the channel, you're going to see a love story or an adventure or a drama or a comedy, or a horror. The way you use your body determines which of those thought waves come through you. And that's why you're successful. All successful people tend to focus on the future. All people that are overwhelmed tend to focus on the past because you can't change it. But so you say, the past is past, so let it go, right? Yeah. So imagine, just for a second, somebody's home, they're a strong, smart person, but they're not feeling strong and smart because they've been sedentary. They're not using their body. And when you don't use your body, you don't have that kind of energy. I don't care who you are, right? You're constantly hearing fear coming at you from all the news that's around there. And so people tend to focus on what's missing, what they can't control, and they think about the past and will the future ever be like that? But none of these patterns are going to help you. But you can change all three. You can train yourselves to focus on what you're grateful for, what you have, and you can always build on success. That's what creates momentum. You can train yourself to be able to say, okay, if that was missing, that's no problem with it. Here's how I'm going to go after it. Here's how I can find the answer if I don't have the answer. And you can train yourself to enjoy this moment while you're building your future. So those three decisions alone, I could give you a dozen. But I'll give you an example. I ask people sometimes in seminars, and I've got 15,000, 30,000 people in a stadium, and I'll say, how many of you know someone who takes antidepressants and they're still depressed? And 90% of the people raise their hand all over the world. And so how could you take antidepressants and still be depressed? Well, because all they do is numb you. In fact, on the side of the box, it says can create suicidal thoughts. So numbing you doesn't deal with the problem. As long as you're constantly focusing on what you don't have or is missing, as long as you're focused on what you can't control, you're going to find yourself not having what you want. So it's not that difficult, but what people need is they need to shake it up. One day I asked him, I said, what is the secret to wealth? And he looked at me, paused, this big smile, and his eyes got really bright like they always did. And he said, Tony, it's what you teach. I said, well, I teach a lot of things, which thing? And he said, gratitude. He said, because you and I, Tony, know billionaires that are miserable, and it's because they're not grateful for what they have. And we both know people have no money, seemingly, but they're so grateful for their health, for their husband, for their wife, for their children. They're so grateful to God. They're so grateful for their life that they're rich. So I think it starts with that gratitude. It starts with that connection to grace, as simplistic as that sounds. And so it's not enough just to have your financial plan. You can have all the money and be miserable. Let's have the money and be really rich emotionally, psychologically.
Just to entrepreneurs in general, and you're an entrepreneur, wildly successful entrepreneur, and you work with and are friends with many, many of the top entrepreneurs in the world. What are a few of the common attributes of the super successful entrepreneurs that you've seen? That might not be the obvious ones that come to mind.
Well, gosh, I'll give you one example because I was just talking to him yesterday. Mark Benioff's a dear friend of mine, and he runs a company called Salesforce.com. He founded it. Mark went to my Unleash the Power Within event about 15 years ago. He went to it 3 times. It's repetition's the mother skill. He immersed himself in it. Again, a pro, not going to do something average. Comes up to me and introduced himself and says, Tony, he said, you've changed my life. I'm working for Oracle. I'm leaving. I'm starting this company, Salesforce.com. We're going to change the business world. I'll never forget. He said, we're going to do $100 million in business. I was teasing the other night. He's going to do $7 billion this year, right? And I've been on that 15-year journey with him. What do they have in common? They have a sense of something they want to serve greater than themselves. The only challenge sometimes in network marketing, and I think what gives it a bad reputation for some people, is you get people in there that really act like they're doing it for something larger than themselves, but it really is only them. Now, there's nothing wrong with you wanting to profit and be successful, but motive does matter. And the most successful entrepreneurs have a motive that includes themselves, but they want to do something that's going to change the world, make the world different. It's like, when you're trying to meet your own needs, you get a certain level of insight. If you're trying to meet the needs of your family, you get a different level of insight because life supports whatever supports more of life, more people. If you're trying to support your community, different insight. If you're trying to have an impact on the world, it's even larger. And I found in network marketing, you find a few missionaries that are like those other entrepreneurs. That really is their mission. They'd honestly do it for free. And they want to make money, and they do make money. But if you're only doing it for the money, the unfortunate part is people sense that, and then they feel like it's just a transaction as opposed to an experience of added value. There's only one way on earth to really become wealthy, and that is do more for others than anybody else is doing. Just think of it this way. If you got the greatest computer in the world and you plug it in, there's not enough electricity, it's not going to work right. Well, tired is the first step to being depressed for most people. Yeah. And most people are tired not because they're working so hard. Oh man, I worked so hard today. What'd you do? I had meeting after meeting. I sat in these meetings, and I talked to people, or I make calls, or I sent emails, and they're like, I'm exhausted. Yeah. I mean, what's happened is we haven't pushed ourselves physiologically for so long that we've gotten weaker and weaker, and so we feel tired from doing nothing. Mm-hmm. And so what you learn when you go through a weekend like that is, holy shit, there is a level of energy on command that's available to me that you'd never believe. But by being in the environment over and over again, you learn it's real and you learn to use it. And when there's enough energy, everything else works better. Your relationship is not going to be great no matter what tools you have if you're tired. Because you're going to go, love you. There's no passion. There's no aliveness, right? Mm-hmm. You're not going to grow your business when you're tired. So a huge part of what I teach, even in Unleash the Power Within, UPW, by the way, for people not been there, it's called Unleash the Power Within. It's a weekend. And on the 4th day, it's all energy. It's all about the things you do with your health and vitality. So you sustain that, because without that, nothing else really matters. Fear is the number one thing that keeps people from doing what's necessary. And anger and rage, while it can mobilize us, if it becomes part of your life on a regular basis, it destroys it. So how do you balance that out? Well, fear, anger, they're both physical, aren't they? Think about, what do you feel like if you're really, ever been so afraid that your throat got really dry, or you feel this feeling in your gut, right? That's physical. Courage is also physical. Again, courage does not mean you're not afraid. Courage means you're afraid, but you do it anyway, right? It's a way of being in your body. So one of the things that I started doing early on is understanding, and those of you who spent 4 days with me, day and night, because we did it, and it's in your body still, how to change the way you feel instantly by a radical change in your body. And so I really want to recommend you do something at least 5 days a week. First thing when you wake up in the morning, it doesn't have to be an hour workout, even 30 minutes. It can be something as little as 5 or 10 minutes. There is not a day when I wake up, I've shared with some of you this already. First thing I do, I go outside, and if I'm lucky enough to be at one of my homes anyway. I have homes in different parts of the world because I've traveled the world and done this. So I'm very fortunate, but I have a cold plunge I've installed in every one, 56 degrees. In my home in Sun Valley, Idaho, I don't have a cold plunge. I don't need it. I walk through the snow in the winter, or in the summer, I walk through the grass, and I get in the river. And literally, the river is usually about 39 to 42 degrees, to give you an idea. Every cell in your body is moved. The blood rushes through everything, right? And I do it for 2 reasons. There's never a day I look forward to doing it. I don't go, I can't wait to go in there. I do it, number one, because it transforms your body. The blood flow, the lymph flow is unbelievable from a health perspective. You just go in for a minute, pop out, and it's like a different world, right? I don't care what it is. Or you could take a freezing shower would be the minimum way you could do this if you couldn't do this. But it's about changing your body so radically. And it's also about developing a simple daily discipline. It's like, I don't negotiate with myself. I tell my brain, I don't go, oh, wait, I'm not ready. Or let me count to 10, or maybe I'll do it tomorrow. That pattern of thinking is what destroys most people's lives and their dreams. You can settle for a life like most people have, or you can create your dreams. But to do it, you need to be able to push yourself. So you need to train yourself in little ways. One of the things, instead of finding the limitations, find the strengths, or decide what every great leader does, create your own culture. Right? That's what a leader does. They don't adapt to the culture. I'm sure you've heard the old phrase that says, reasonable people adapt to the culture, unreasonable people adapt the culture to themselves. That's why all breakthroughs come from unreasonable people. I'm paraphrasing, that's not the right language, but that's the essence of it. And so it's like you have to then find within yourself that I have so much passion, so much certainty, I'm gonna build that certainty. And instead of getting overwhelmed by all the things you gotta do, you're gonna say, let me just make sure every day I'm making progress. There's so many ways that we define ourselves, and identity is just the culmination of the beliefs you have about who you are. But those beliefs control how you think, how you feel, what you perceive, how you interact with people, what you're willing to do, not willing to do. The most powerful force in the human personality is the need to stay consistent with how we define ourselves. And if you think of someone who's having, quote, an identity crisis, what is that? They turn a certain age and they quickly question everything they had accepted. A belief is something you feel absolutely certain about. You don't believe something if you start to question it. You produce doubt. And so sometimes there are certain stages of life where someone suddenly goes out and has this identity crisis and they buy a sports car or whatever the case may be, and they change their hair and they do everything else. But what's really happening is they're trying to redefine themselves, having defined themselves a long time ago. And we all have these ways of defining ourselves. But let me give you an example of just how powerful it is. So I'll give you a simplistic example. I don't know if you ever smoked cigarettes or know someone who did, but if you go to someone who smokes cigarettes and no longer does, and you said to them, would you like a cigarette? They wouldn't say to you, what brand is it? What would they say to you? No, I'm not a smoker. I'm not one of those. And that's really important because we define ourselves by what we are and by what we're not. And it's not effortful when you're not a smoker. It's not effortful if you say, I'm a health nut, to, not smoke. It's just not part of your world. You don't even consider it, because that need to stay consistent with how you define yourself is the basis of a human being's basic personality making decisions. Now, the downside of this, of course, is you can create a negative identity for yourself. You can have an identity that says, let's say you've put things off a lot and you're about to go do something and then you get fearful. Everybody has the fear of failure, the fear of something, of the unknown. And the last minute, you don't do it. And then you say, I'm really going to do this. And you do it again and again. After a while, you don't want to disappoint yourself. So you might develop a new identity and say, I'm a procrastinator. Well, once that's who you are, that behavior is going to be consistent. It is that powerful a control system on how we function as human beings. So anything you attach the words I am to over and over again, consistency with your language, with your emotion, and with an emotional intensity, you'll eventually become it because it becomes a belief, and a belief is self-fulfilling. Whether you think you can, whether you think you can't, you're right. So I think this subject, being able to differentiate between having a certain feeling or acting a certain way and being that kind of person is huge. You can use this tool. When I'm working with somebody, I'm looking to create a lasting change. I'm looking to help that person shift how they perceive who they are permanently, not just what they were doing. And this person, by the way, told me at one point, he said, what do you want to accomplish? And I gave him some of my dreams and goals. And he said, well, those are big. He said, how many, private equity guys do you know? How many people, investment bankers do you know? And I said, no, I don't know, maybe a dozen. He goes, how many you spend time with? I said, none. He said, I want you to go and spend time with them. I said, but I don't have something to give. I always have to give something. It's just my way I'm wired, right? I don't know what I really want yet or how to do it, because it doesn't matter. They're going to want to be around you, get around them. And I did this for months. And then suddenly one day, sure enough, he said, they're going to want to do a deal with you. And then somebody brought me this deal. And the deal at the time, made me about $40 million in 2 months when I'd never made $4 million in a year working 20-hour days. And then that deal fell apart afterwards. They wanted me to change the deal. And I learned from him, when somebody wants to change the deal, don't get pissed, think about what you want. And I put that in a new deal where I made $400 million 2 years later. So proximity is power. Put yourself in proximity, keep your passion alive, keep making progress, and make sure you're trying to innovate or grow every day in some way. Face your fears every single day. You'll find it'll change your life. But as I've experienced that over the decades, I also noticed that so many people who are great achievers were just not happy. I mean, I go to India, I usually go about every 12 to 18 months, and I remember when I first went there, it was like the poverty was overwhelming to me. And And it was so confusing to see people so happy, because all around them, they seemed to have such squalor. I'd see someone sitting in the street and there was just so much joy in their eyes if you took the time to feel them and talk with them instead of judging the environment. And then I'd come home to the United States where there's all this external abundance, and you'd find people, many of you know, I wrote Money Master the Game. I interviewed 50 of the smartest financial people in the world, self-made billionaires, and I wouldn't say the majority of them are really happy. And it has nothing to do with the money. It's that the internal world was not mastered. So if there's two sciences or two master skills, I think, in life that we want, it's like if we took East and West and put them together and we didn't make the other one wrong, we'd say, hey, it's mastering the science of achievement, but also the art of fulfillment. And of the two, for the last 4 or 5 years, I've been traveling the country, really trying to get people to feel and experience the beauty that comes when what's inside is great, regardless of what's outside. The outside world will never make you happy long term. What you get will never make you happy. Who you become, what you experience, what you give, that's what makes us really happy.
You don't know what's happening in the future and you're uncertain. You go like, oh, what do I want? I don't know. Because your mental emotional state is the single most important ingredient to not only success, but fulfillment. And most of us do not know how to manage it. And when I say manage it, I'm really talking about your mind and your emotions, right? Those are the two things that if you can master those, because most people are trying to master the outside world, and you can't control the outside world. You can influence it. But the one thing you can control is how you use your mind, what you do with your emotions. And if you think about the quality of your life, again, look at people who supposedly have everything and they're miserable. I get those phone calls from the people that are so, quote, famous, the great actors, the great musicians. They won the Academy Award. They just won the gold medal, and they're literally depressed. And the reason is because they thought getting something would eventually make them feel a certain way, and it does for this long. And then you're off to the next thing. And then, when you work so hard for something forever like that, it's not there. So what I really like people to understand is that the quality of your life is the quality of your emotions. If you have $1 billion and every day your habitual emotions are feeling frustrated and stressed and overwhelmed, your life is called frustrated, stressed, and overwhelmed. If you have 3 beautiful children and a great husband or a wife or boyfriend or girlfriend, and every day you worry, your life is not love. Your life is worry. It doesn't matter how you have this beautiful family. So think of it. Emotions control the quality of our life, and we have habitual emotions. That's why you'll see people who, they're always angry about something. I'm sure you know somebody like that. Or they're always worried about something. If they're not worried about somebody they know, they worry about something they don't even know, right? Or, some people that are, think they're funny and they're not, but they have a good time, Who do you want to hang out with? So learning how to direct your emotions, and emotions create everything. Everything you want in your quote unquote success will be driven by having certain drives of emotion. And, think about it. Emotions create wars. Emotions create peace eventually. Emotions are what get you in a relationship. Emotions, how we all got here, somebody had sex and that was driven by emotion. So we are incredibly emotionally unfit today.
When I was growing up, I grew up very poor, and I'm the oldest of 3, and I had to do all the shopping, all the grocery shopping on my bicycle, come home, make the meal, and I was happy with all that. But then, right when you wanted to be done with your work and go watch sports or do something great, I had to wash the dishes. So I swore someday I will never do the labor of washing dishes. I will afford a dishwasher. I will find some way to not have to do dishes. I tell you this as a background because when I told him I couldn't be a furniture mover, he looks down and goes, oh, only one other job left, dishwashing. Now, dishwashing in India is a different labor than you might picture in your kitchen. And you're in this ashram, and I report, and there's these milk solids and yogurts on the floor, and you're standing in your bare feet, and you're taking these filthy dishes coming across, and it's 4 hours a day for 6 or 7 days. I'm telling you, I was so angry, I was so mad, I was mad at myself that I was there, and I was washing these dishes and upset, and plus I was a vegan, and I didn't like the fact there was milk on the floor. I was judgmental about everything. In the middle of all this stuff, after about an hour of being angry, I got tired of being angry, and some part of me kicked in and goes, Dan, whatever you do, you're the best at it. Why don't you be the best damn dishwasher? So I started washing these dishes with a frenzy. I'm like, come on, guys, speed this thing up. And something magical happened. The thing that I thought was most disgusting and filled with labor and work became play. And I started to laugh at myself. And I thought, what an ego jerk you are to think that you're below washing some dishes. And then I got beyond my ego and jerk into, why not just enjoy whatever you do, and then when you do, all of a sudden it's not work anymore. And that was my great spiritual breakthrough. I eventually did meet with this guru and try to straighten him out, but he didn't think very much of an 18-year-old kid straighten him out. He laughed quite a bit. He did talk to my partners and said, I think you guys should just, keep teaching what you're teaching. And Fit for Life went on to be one of the most successful books in history. But I can't claim credit for that. I was a part of that little piece. But I will tell you that if you can if you can get yourself to love to do the stuff you hate to do, then there's no limit to the success you can have in your life. If you can take the things that you're afraid you'd have to do to succeed in your business or to succeed in your life or to succeed in your relationship, there are things everybody doesn't want to do. And the more focused you are on how you're not going to do that, the more life seems to bring those things up for you and makes them barriers.